Looking back now, I can see the signs. But back then, I didn't notice a thing. I genuinely believed my family was one of the good ones. You know the type. Sunday pancakes at the kitchen table, loud laughter over board games, road trips with off-key singing in the car. We had all the pieces of what I thought made a happy American household. A 2-story home in a quiet suburb, a big backyard with a tire swing, and a dog named Lucky who barked at every squirrel that crossed our fence. I was the oldest, so I had this unspoken role of being the responsible one. Then there was my little brother Tyler, who had the kind of imagination that could turn a cardboard box into a spaceship. Mom worked part-time at the local library. She had this peaceful energy, always humming to herself while folding laundry or cooking dinner. And Dad was the hero. He worked long hours as a construction supervisor, came home with calloused hands and dusty boots, and still managed to toss the football with us in the yard before dinner. To me, we were the American dream in motion, stable, loving, whole. But the truth is, sometimes love can hide a lot of silence, and silence, over time, becomes a weight you stop noticing until it crushes something. There were things I didn't question, like why Mom sometimes stared too long out the window, eyes glazed over while stirring her coffee, or why Dad's jokes became less frequent, why Tyler sometimes flinched when voices got too loud. I brushed it all off as normal family stuff. Every family has their moments, right? It wasn't until years later that I realized what we had wasn't perfect. It was carefully performed. We were good at acting like everything was fine. We had the right props, the right routines, the right smiles. But underneath it all, there was a quiet tension none of us ever spoke about. We were more like a beautifully painted house with a cracked foundation. From the outside, nobody could see the damage, but inside something was slowly falling apart. And the truth is, I think we all knew, just a little. We just didn't want to admit it, because admitting it meant doing something about it, and doing something about it meant risking the illusion we worked so hard to maintain. At that point in my life, I still believed in happy endings. I thought if we just kept going, things would fix themselves. Families don't fall apart, I used to think. Not ours, anyway. I didn't know then that everything I believed about my family was about to be tested, and that the illusion I held on to so tightly was already starting to fade. The day Dad disappeared started like any other. I remembered the smell of bacon and eggs drifting from the kitchen. Mom was humming a tune I didn't recognize. Tyler was sprawled out on the living room floor with his Legos. It was a regular Tuesday, and we were all just going through the motions. Dad had left early that morning for work, or at least that's what we thought. When he didn't come home that evening, we didn't panic. Not right away. Construction jobs sometimes ran late. Maybe there was traffic. Maybe he stopped for a beer with the guys. Mom texted him, then called. No answer. She told me not to worry, but I could see it in her eyes. Something didn't feel right. By midnight, worry had turned into dread. His phone went straight to voicemail. His truck wasn't in the driveway. Mom kept pacing the living room, biting her fingernail, something she hadn't done in years. Tyler had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching the same toy robot Dad had given him for his birthday a few weeks back. I remember sitting there, staring at the door, willing it to open, but it never did. The next morning, he still hadn't come back, and there was still no call, no text, nothing. Mom filed a missing person report by noon, and I watched her trying to keep it together while answering the cops' questions. It was like watching someone slowly sink underwater, only they're pretending they can breathe just fine. I skipped school for the rest of that week, not because anyone told me to, but because I couldn't focus. How could I? Every sound made me flinch. Every car pulling into the neighborhood had me rushing to the window, and every night I'd lie awake, imagining every possible scenario. Car accident. Amnesia. Maybe he'd been mugged. Maybe he was in a hospital somewhere, unable to remember his name. I clung to those wild theories because the alternative was too painful to face. But deep down, something in me started to shift. A quiet voice, one I'd never heard before, whispered that this wasn't an accident, that maybe he left on purpose. Mom never said it aloud, not then, but I could see the war inside her. One part of her wanted to believe he was in trouble. The other part, the part she didn't want to face, was already grieving something else entirely. We didn't get a letter, not even a sticky note. No goodbye, no explanation, just an empty chair at the dinner table and a silence that seemed to get louder with every passing day. That's when things began to unravel. Slowly at first, like a thread being pulled from the edge of a sweater. But once it started, there was no stopping it. That day marked the end of something I didn't even know we were losing. It was the day my father vanished, and the day our family stopped pretending we were unbreakable. After Dad vanished, life didn't come to a screeching halt. It just quietly shifted into something heavier. The world didn't stop turning. The sun still came up every morning, traffic still buzzed down our street, and neighbors still waved like everything was normal. But inside our home, nothing felt normal anymore. Mom changed almost overnight. She was still gentle, still loving, but a constant tension wrapped around her shoulders like a winter coat she couldn't take off. She started working double shifts at the library and took on evening cleaning gigs just to keep the lights on. I remember waking up some nights to the sound of her crying in the kitchen, thinking no one could hear. I never said anything. I just listened, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Money became tight fast. The mortgage, the bills, groceries. It was like this mountain we kept trying to climb, but the peak never got any closer. I got a part-time job at a grocery store, bagging groceries after school, not because Mom asked me to, she never would have, but I saw the unopened envelopes piling up on the counter, and I knew I had to do something. Then there was Tyler. He was only 8, but he understood more than anyone gave him credit for. He didn't talk much after Dad left, just kind of retreated into himself. His room became his whole world. He'd spend hours drawing pictures of superheroes and robots, the kind of fantasy places where dads never leave and nothing bad happens. I tried to be there for him, but some days I didn't even know how to be there for myself. We stopped doing the things we used to love. No more movie nights, no more game nights, no more pancakes on Sundays. The house felt quieter, not the peaceful kind, but the kind where every sound echoes too loudly. Even Lucky, our dog, stopped barking as much. He just sat by the front door some evenings, like he was waiting for someone who was never coming back. And still, we didn't talk about it. Not really. It was like this unspoken agreement. We all carried our grief in silence. Maybe because we were afraid that saying it out loud would make it real, that admitting Dad was gone for good would make the finality settle in. So instead, we danced around the pain, each of us dealing in our own quiet way. I kept telling myself to be strong, for Tyler, for Mom, but some nights I'd just lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how a man could just disappear from his own family and act like we never existed. It was in those quiet, aching days that I learned something no one ever taught me. Sometimes the loudest pain is the one no one hears, and carrying it silently, that's the part that really breaks you. It wasn't until several months later that the truth finally came crashing down. We'd spent those months in limbo, hoping, waiting, pretending everything might just somehow go back to the way it was, but deep down, we all knew it wasn't coming back. One Tuesday afternoon, I got a call at work. It was from a number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped when I answered, thinking it might be something related to Dad. Maybe someone had finally found him. But it wasn't him, it was a woman. At first I thought it was a prank. I wasn't prepared for what she said next, so I just listened in stunned silence as her words sank in. She told me her name was Sarah, and she was married to my father. Married to my father. The whole world stopped, moving in that moment. She went on to explain that my father had been living with her and their 2 children for over a year. She spoke of him like he was some kind of hero, how he helped fix things around the house, how he spent weekends with the kids, how he'd promised he was coming back to see her family. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It felt like a joke, a sick one. But it wasn't. The details she shared were more than enough to shatter everything I had believed. Dad had left us, left me, and hadn't just disappeared into thin air. He had walked away from his family and walked straight into someone else's. The woman even mentioned a few things about how he had felt trapped with us, how things had grown complicated between him and Mom. It felt like a slap in the face, like every small thing I had ever felt or noticed was suddenly made into this grand, undeniable truth. The cracks I had sensed in our family were there for a reason, because he had made the choice to leave, and he'd done it without a second thought. I didn't even know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room, but I couldn't. I stayed still, listening to her voice, trying to wrap my mind around the depth of what she was saying. She told me to take care of my mom, and that she hoped I could find it in my heart to understand. She apologized, but it was too late for that. When I hung up, the room felt colder. My legs went weak, and I had to sit down, my back pressed against the kitchen counter. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Sadness? It all came rushing in, but none of it seemed enough to capture the totality of what I'd just learned. I didn't tell Mom that day. I couldn't. She had already suffered so much. Finding out the truth felt like the kind of thing that might destroy her. But the silence between us stretched out like a painful gap. The weight of the secret I now carried felt like another thing I had to hide, another burden to bear alone. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair where Dad used to sit. It hit me then, how much I had been holding on to this idea of him as the dad I remembered, the man who used to show up, who used to laugh and play with us, the man who was now just a stranger. The truth had cut deeper than I could have imagined. But in that moment, I realized something else. The truth, as painful as it was the first step toward finally letting go. I don't think anything truly prepares you for the moment you come face to face with the person who broke your world apart. Not the long nights spent replaying conversations in your head, not the imaginary arguments you have in the shower, not even the anger that builds with every day they stay silent. Nothing prepares you for reality, and nothing prepared me for that moment when I finally saw my father again. After that phone call with Sarah, I sat on the truth for a while. I told no one, not Mom, not Tyler. I just kept it buried. But it ate away at me. Every day the image of him laughing with some other family, tucking someone else's kids into bed, replaced the memories I had of him. I needed answers, not for closure. I didn't even believe in that anymore, but for clarity. I wanted to look him in the eyes and ask him why we weren't, so I tracked him down. It didn't take much, honestly. A few social media breadcrumbs, some online searches, and there he was, living in a modest neighborhood a few towns over. The irony stung. He wasn't far at all. He'd built this new life right under our noses. I showed up on a Saturday morning, hands shaking, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I stood outside his house for a long time, watching, thinking. The front door opened eventually, and there he was, wearing a faded t-shirt and holding a cup of coffee. He didn't see me at first. He just looked ordinary, and for some reason that made it worse. When he finally noticed me, his expression froze. He didn't say my name. He didn't run up or apologize or act surprised. He just stood there, caught somewhere between guilt and fear, like a man who'd hoped this day would never come. I asked if we could talk. He nodded hesitantly and led me around back where we wouldn't be seen. We sat on old patio chairs under a cloudy sky. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just asked why, and he told me. He spoke in a quiet, almost rehearsed tone, said he had felt trapped for years, said he didn't feel like himself anymore, that our home had become a place where he felt invisible, like he was just going through the motions. He told me he never stopped loving me or Tyler, but that he had to find happiness for himself. It hurt more than I expected. Not because he left, but because in his version of the story we were collateral damage, necessary losses in his pursuit of peace. He didn't even seem to grasp how deep the wound went. I listened. I nodded, and when he was done, I told him one thing, that he didn't just leave a house. He left a family, a mother who gave everything, a son who still draws robots hoping to impress him, and me, the kid who used to think the world of him. I didn't get closure that day, but I got the truth, and in a strange way, that was the beginning of healing, not just for me, but for all of us. After I confronted my father and walked away, I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because the weight of wondering, of fantasizing about the why, was finally gone. But heavier because now I carried something more solid, truth. And truth, as liberating as it is, can feel like a boulder you have to carry uphill when you're not ready for it. I didn't tell Mom or Tyler what happened right away. I needed time to process it on my own. I spent a few days in a strange headspace, going through the motions at work, doing homework I didn't care about, and staring at the ceiling at night, trying to piece together what moving on was supposed to look like. It was Mom who cracked first. One night she came into my room with a tired smile and asked how I was really doing. Not the polite version, not the strong for Tyler version, the real one. I didn't mean to break down, but I did. I told her everything. About Sarah, about Dad's new life, about the conversation on the patio and how hollow it all felt. She didn't cry. She just sat with me, her hand over mine, eyes full of something deeper than sadness. Maybe it was acceptance. Maybe it was the quiet strength of someone who had already made peace with something I was just beginning to understand. She told me she had suspected the truth long ago but had chosen not to chase it, because chasing ghosts, she said, only leaves you emptier. That moment changed something between us. We started talking more, not about Dad necessarily, but about us, about how we were going to move forward. We made a list, scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt of small things we wanted to start doing again. Sunday pancakes, Friday movie nights, walks with Tyler after dinner. None of it felt big or dramatic, just real, just human. Tyler, still quiet and sensitive, eventually opened up too. He asked if Dad was coming back, and I told him no. I didn't sugarcoat it. He deserved honesty, just like I had. I braced for tears, but instead, he nodded slowly and asked if we could still build the robot we'd started months ago. So we did. That little robot, made of wires, cardboard, and cheap plastic, became something more. It was proof that we were still a family, even in pieces. Rebuilding wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, nights when we'd fall back into silence, or when a commercial or an old photo would trigger a wave of grief. But there was also laughter, little pockets of light that started to show up again, like watching Mom dance while cooking, or hearing Tyler laugh so hard he snorted, or realizing I could breathe a little easier than I did the week before. That's the thing about Rubble. It looks like destruction, but it's also the beginning of reconstruction. We weren't the same family we once were, but maybe, just maybe, we were becoming something stronger. Looking back now, I realize that everything that happened, my father's disappearance, the betrayal, the silence, the pain, it all became the forge that shaped who I am. At the time, it felt like life was falling apart piece by piece, but now, with some distance, I see how it was also coming together in ways I couldn't have imagined. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that family isn't just about who's supposed to be there. It's about who chooses to stay. My mom could have crumbled. She could have let bitterness or blame consume her. But she didn't. She stood tall, even when it broke her back to carry everything alone. And in that quiet strength, she taught me that real love doesn't abandon you in your worst moments. It stays, it sacrifices, it endures. I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or even reconciling. I haven't seen my father since that day on the patio. I don't plan to, but I did eventually forgive him. Not for his sake, for mine. Holding on to that anger felt like drinking poison and hoping he would suffer. It ate at me, but letting go, that gave me space to heal. I forgave the man, not the choices. I forgave the pain, not the betrayal, and in doing so, I took back a piece of myself. Then there's Tyler. Watching him bounce back taught me more about resilience than any self-help book ever could. Kids are incredible like that. He went from that withdrawn little boy hiding in his room to someone who laughs again, who plays, who dreams. He reminded me that it's okay to hurt, and that it's also okay to move on. I learned that silence can destroy, but vulnerability can rebuild. Once I started talking, really talking to Mom and Tyler, everything changed. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were connecting. And those conversations, as awkward and tearful as some of them were, became the foundation for a new life. We were no longer pretending. We were no longer holding our breath, waiting for someone to come home who never would. We were living together, honestly. And finally, I learned the value of showing up. That might sound simple, but it's everything. It's in being present when someone else is hurting. It's in cooking dinner when you're tired. It's in listening when you'd rather walk away. In a world where people ghost and vanish and make excuses, showing up matters more than most people realize. My story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. My dad didn't come back to apologize. Our family didn't magically heal overnight. But we did heal, slowly, honestly, together. And if there's one thing I've taken with me from all of this, it's that broken doesn't mean destroyed. Sometimes, broken just means you have a chance to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the people who never left your side. That's the kind of family we became, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story and walk this journey with me. Your presence means more than you know.